Welcome back to the Oral Health Podcast, where we're in the fifth and final week of National Smile Month now, where we are focusing on the different ways that the mouth and the body are connected. So today we are taking a more focused look at oral health within sports, where we're looking at nutrition and sports supplements as well as mouthguard use. So today I am talking to Dr. Guy Deeming, who is an orthodontist up in the northeast of England, about the different ways that sports and oral health are connected from his experience. And also thank you to Align Technology for linking us up with Guy. Without you, this conversation wouldn't have been able to happen. So I hope that everyone listening enjoys the conversation as much as I did. Guy, do you want to just give a little introduction about yourself for anyone that might not know you?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sophie. My name is Guy Deeming. I'm a specialist orthodontist based in the northeast of England, working in mixed NHS and private practice. And we look after a lot of people who engage in sporting activities on a very regular basis, whether that's our younger patients and teenage patients, or indeed increasing numbers of our adult patients because of the general move towards obviously health and self-improvement. There's a lot of crossover between the work that we do and what people tend to do when they've got their trainers on.
So talk a little bit about that then. I guess there is a crossover between people wanting to go and get things done to improve their oral health, and then also things like gyms and sports. And now that COVID procedures are coming to be a little bit less intense, people can go and do contact sports and things like that.
I think that's right. Looking after children with braces who play rugby and hockey at school has always been an issue. There's always been challenges around that. But there's no question that the number of people that are seeking opportunities to improve their health and well-being, whether that's through orthodontics or whether that's through exercise or whether that's through quite serious sporting endeavors, seems to be on the increase. And you only need to look at the popularity of things like parkrun. And frankly, on the other end of the extreme, the popularity of some of the ultra marathons, the number of extreme long distance races that are now available wherever you are in the world compared to even 10 or 15 years ago is extraordinary. So there's definitely something going on about the way people want to exist on the planet in terms of feeling good and looking good. And there is undoubtedly some crossover. And of course, that raises issues and challenges and questions as we kind of tread the line between doing the right thing by your sport and your training, and also, of course, keeping you safe in terms of your teeth and dental and oral health, particularly during orthodontic treatment, which is my frame of reference during my 9 to 5 work.
How can orthodontics affect you when you're playing sport? I mean, the obvious thing that comes to mind for me is, I guess, mouth guards. You've got to get different types of mouth guards, but is there anything else?
There's a couple of things. And actually, when we look back at the evidence base for orthodontics, and one of the things that we do know is that younger patients with particularly large overjets, that's obviously teeth stick out, for want of a better term, tend to be at more risk of trauma. And particularly young boys and girls who maybe engage in sort of football and contact sports and those kinds of things, maybe a little bit more prone when they do have teeth that sit forwards to getting knocks on those front teeth. So that's the first thing, that orthodontic treatment per se to correct those types of problems can help reduce some of those risks of trauma. And it's one of the things that we do know from the orthodontic evidence base. The second thing, of course, as you rightly say, is the issue around mouth guards. And mouth guards is a constant battle, isn't it? Because they are not always the most comfortable thing or the most glamorous thing to do, and maybe not the most pleasant thing when they've been floating around at the bottom of your kit bag for a week next to your rugby boots and your whatever else you forgot to put in the wash when you got home from games last week. So I think it is a constant battle. And I think the trouble is with mouth guards historically is that we all view the probability of an accident in a different way. So you say, well, I was fine last week, so I'll be fine this week. But that's not quite how it works. So getting young people to engage with something preventative, I think, is incredibly important. And there's definitely been a move towards making mouth guards more acceptable in terms of colors and styles, and actually kind of making them a little bit cool. There's one particular very high profile sports manufacturer that's done a very good job of branding mouth guards and making them something that people want to be seen in. But it also fits because people want to have nice teeth and they want to have a nice smile, and they will make efforts to protect themselves from that, whatever their age, actually, which is really nice. So to the point, yeah, wearing a mouth guard is very, very important if you're engaging in contact sports. It becomes even more important when you have fixed orthodontic appliances, because the consequences of getting an elbow or a knee or a head to the teeth can be quite significant, particularly in terms of the way the lips can be damaged or bruised or cut with the appliance. It doesn't always look great, can protect the teeth by holding them in position and providing that little bit of splint and support from the teeth being knocked clean out, which is obviously the worst case scenario. So it remains important. It remains an ongoing conversation with all of our patients. What hobbies do you engage with? Do you wear a mouth guard? And then talking them through the options to protect themselves when they're doing those contact sports.
You know, I play a contact sport, and it's funny when you say it about the mouth guard being left in the bottom of the kit bag, because I've definitely done that a few times and it's grim. You know, like you can get away with leaving elbow pads, knee pads and things in the kit, but if you forget to clean your mouth guard and you pop it in, you're going to know about it. It's horrid.
I have a 12-year-old son, and he has a mouth guard. And I say, "Have you got your mouth guard?" He goes, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, do you need a new one yet?" And he goes, "No, it's fine." And it's like, just, oh yeah, no, it's not pretty. But he's, listen, whatever. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, I suppose. But that's a fairly robust immune system by now. That's what I'm going to say.
Is there anything you should do when you're cleaning something like a mouth guard, just while we're on the topic? Because I've got to admit, I really don't know much about it.
Depends on how they're made. I mean, some of them, classically, you get the kind of boil and bite mouth guards from a high street retailer, and they're a great get you out of trouble solution, actually. And we certainly recommended those a lot during COVID and when people got stuck. But obviously, you can't expose them to warm temperatures because they'll completely lose their shape. And equally, most mouth guards don't do well with warm temperatures. And you need to be a little bit careful with abrasives as well, because they can damage the material. They can actually create microscopic little kind of abrasions in there, which will attract the bacteria. So there are proprietary cleaning products you can get, various retainer cleaners, which you can use according to the instructions. So there's a number of those that exist. But I know the other thing that we're seeing more of now, you can get little disinfecting sprays, which are really quite nice, so that you can kind of take your mouth guard out. You can keep a little bottle of spray, you spray that into the mouth guard, pop it into the box, because you should always keep it in a box. That's very important. On one more tip, make sure the box has got ventilation holes in it. Otherwise, the curse of the moldy mouth guard might be there in a week's time, and that's really unpleasant. So yeah, the sprays, the retainer cleaning sprays, are increasing in popularity and availability, and do work well because they can just sit in your kit bag, little spray back in the box, rinse it under the tap or a bit of water, and then get it back in next week, and away you go. And that should keep the odor and some of the any kind of slightly unpleasant bacterial growth to a minimum. But certainly heat and abrasives are the enemy of these things.
And when if someone has a fixed like train track braces, do they then have to get special mouth guards and things made by an orthodontist?
It's a very, very common question. And the short answer is yes to all. My advice generally depends a little bit on what sport they're playing, how seriously they're playing it, and actually to some degree how old they are and how quickly the dentition is developing. If they are playing occasional school hockey, then the boil and bite type mouth guard may be sufficient, as long as it fits well, doesn't fall out the mouth, and covers the teeth, particularly in the early stages of the treatment, because the advantage of those is that you can remold them. However, if it does not fit properly, if it doesn't cover and protect both the braces and the teeth, or it comes out, or they are playing more serious sports, then they must consider investing in a custom-made mouth guard by the orthodontist, using an appropriately registered laboratory where they will create the space around the brackets. The mouth guard will then be trimmed appropriately and safely. Certain sports have got very specific regulations, but some of the martial arts and boxing being most notable. The Amateur Boxing Association has got very strict rules around how mouth guards are made and how they are used. And the interesting thing about that is that the boxers accept that. And there is actually almost a status and a credibility for having the mouth guard, in contrast to some of the other sports. I'm going to say football, where actually the idea of wearing a mouth guard would really single you out as being, why are you wearing a mouth guard? And then obviously some of the others are in the middle. But so, for example, if you do play certain contact sports, they won't let you have black or red mouth guards because they want to be able to see if you do get a knock, if there's any bleeding and so on and so forth. So you do need to be careful and certainly seek the advice of the sporting organization if there is any specific questions around the type and form of the mouth guard, boxing and kickboxing and some of the other martial arts being specific ones that come to mind. So generally, as I say, a sliding scale. Boil and Bite's great. You can actually get off the shelf ones. They're good get you out of trouble options if you lose your main one, and they can work really well, but it's a bit like nobody's average. They never quite fit as well as as custom made one, and that has to be the gold standard. Mm-hmm. But equally, it's not fair or reasonable to expect patients or parents of patients to have a new mouth guard made every 8 weeks because the teeth have moved. So it's striking that balance, really. But your orthodontist or your dentist, I would hope and imagine, would always give you sound advice. And indeed, the British Orthodontic Society and the Safe Smiles campaign, there's lots of information on the website there that you can look for and look to provide that kind of information and support.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was actually going to be one of my other questions of, your teeth shape and your mouth shape change so often when you're having braces. So surely that is quite an ongoing expense. And I guess where one of these melt and mold models could be handy, because when your mouth changes, you can mold it as you go.
Yeah, it can work. And indeed it can. And then once you get into a later stage of treatment where things are a little bit more stable, then maybe investing in a customized one. But of course, by definition, because you've got the braces on there in the first place, they're designed to not fit incredibly closely because they've got to fit around the braces. So they can become remarkably tolerant, actually. And certainly, I wouldn't throw it away if it does start to stop fitting as comfortably. Take it to your orthodontist, let them have a little look. And quite commonly, they can be trimmed or adjusted to give it another lease of life for another couple of months. Probably not something to take on yourself unless you're feeling particularly confident. But it's amazing how long these things will keep going and still be effective. Now, the other option, of course, is that you have treatments with clear aligners, which is the other option, which is something that we've seen. I've had the good fortune to treat a number of professional boxers, and they have sought out treatments with clear aligners as opposed to fixed braces because they are doing so much sport and so much training, and they need those mouth guards to fit carefully and properly. And with a clear aligner treatment, you can have a mouth guard that fits as good as it ever did. And of course, the clear aligner in and of itself provides some degree of protection, and you can even wear a mouth guard over the top. So there are some very specific advantages to that particular style of treatment that sports people are seeking out and actually having recommended to them quite rightly, in my view, because it does take away some of those soft tissue risks with a fixed appliance. Of course, the overarching needs of treatment should dominate, but as we grow in sophistication in terms of our offerings to patients, that's becoming an ever more popular and viable option for serious contact sports players.
That's really good to know. And that's not something I was aware of, that you can wear a mouth guard over the top of a clear aligner sometimes.
The secret is we discovered that by accident.
Okay.
we forgot to tell a patient to take the aligners out, and they came back and they said, "Oh, it's brilliant. I feel like we've got double the protection." And we go, yeah, that's a very good idea. So it's it's serendipitous, let's call it serendipitous. Mm-hmm. So now we give patients the choice. And the issue with that, of course, is that with aligners they need to be worn, otherwise the treatment doesn't work. And if you've got somebody that's training or sparring for 5 hours a day and they're not, they need to wear it, otherwise the whole thing is slightly futile, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, so I'm going to circle back just a little bit. When you're getting orthodontic treatment done, because the teeth are moving, they're much more sensitive. And so are you then at more risk for things like injuries or getting teeth knocked out, or like injuries becoming more severe because of the treatment you're having?
No, I don't think that's quite the case. However, the one thing I would say at this stage is that teeth that have had previous trauma. So in other words, if you have knocked your teeth through sport or whatever it might be, then those teeth can be more vulnerable during orthodontic treatment. And it's certainly worth flagging that to your orthodontist if they don't specifically ask you that tooth has had a knock or whatever. I mean, frankly, 99 times out of 100 it'll be picked up anyway, but certainly previous trauma is an indication for a higher risk situation. But orthodontic treatment in and of itself does not mean that you are more risk of trauma or indeed more severe trauma. In fact, probably people will be more careful when they've got their braces on, because they know that, goodness me, I don't want to get my lip caught on these if I get the proverbial elbow. So I think there is an association there, but it's the other way around. So the previously traumatized teeth are at more risk, but the sport in itself doesn't predispose you to more risk. Teeth can feel tender though, so the idea of getting a knock on your slightly tender bruised teeth is not hugely appealing for lots of patients. So but sport is a labor of love for lots of people, and I don't think orthodontic treatment should get in the way of that. I think it's incredibly important that people are encouraged to continue to engage with those hobbies and lifestyles. And actually, I think one of the things as orthodontists we are striving to do in 2022 is to make treatments more acceptable, is to make them more compatible with people's lifestyles, is to make it easier for people to continue to do what they really, really enjoy and what's good for them and what they might be brilliant at and what they might go on to represent the United Kingdom or, whichever part of the country you're in at the next Olympic Games or whatever. So I think it's actually really important that we don't take a very sort of judgmental finger wagging view on, well, you can't do this and you can't do that. We'll say, well, how do we allow you to do this in a way that's safe and so on and so forth? And actually, the confidence which comes with a great smile is the same sort of confidence that you get through sporting success and endeavor and feeling good and feeling like you've got that self-confident smile and so on and so forth. So I think the two things are really, really closely linked, and we do see that a lot. And there's a slightly cheesy line about the day you win the race or win the fight or win the match, you want to be there grinning like a Cheshire cat without feeling like your teeth are a barrier to that. I did go through a little phase of treating lots of footballers who really wanted to have metal braces. So there was a little kind of cohort of professional footballers up where I am who all had the metal braces, because I think they must have all thought it was cool at the time. And they kind of made it cool, actually, because when we got the 13-year-old in the next day saying, well, so-and-so from so-and-so, he's got the braces. Did you see the braces? And but it's amazing how these things play through.
With sport, and if you're doing sport a lot and you're having things like supplements and sports drinks and things, these have knock-on effects to your oral health. Yes. And do you have any advice for, I know people say you can make things like homemade sports drinks. I personally don't trust it, but what dentally speaking, like what can you do to help make sure you're getting everything you need replaced, but you're actually also taking care of your mouth?
Okay, so I was going to mention it if you didn't, because I think this is the topic that we need to be addressing over and above trauma, which is actually the curse and the blight of sports and energy drinks, which have been marketed incredibly effectively. That if you go so much as walking to the post box at the end of the street, you need to have 38 cups of sugar in a sweetened, in a fruit flavored bottle, and actually it's complete nonsense, and it's incredibly damaging to the teeth. And one of the things that we struggle with most of all, particularly with younger patients, is the tendency for them to snack and graze on sports drinks under the illusion that they may represent a healthy option, and they're not. They're completely chock full of sugar, and it causes unbelievable damage to the teeth, particularly so if you happen to have a fixed appliance in place. So one of the first things that we talk to patients about when they're giving them diet advice at the start or during their treatment is whether or not they drink sports drinks or energy drinks. And we all know what they are. We don't need to name them. And they're a disaster. And they're a disaster zone because they're made out to be healthy. They're made out to be popular. They've been made to be popular amongst younger patients as an alternative to the classic kind of soda brands that we're all so familiar with, which at least did what they said on the tin, literally and metaphorically. Whereas these are a Trojan horse of dental disease. So that goes first. The second point here is around, well, actually, what do people who are engaging with sport actually need to consume? And if you speak to a nutritionist, particularly those with a particular interest in sport, and they will say that, frankly, if you eat a healthy, balanced diet and are well hydrated, you don't need to do anything. That using, a park run as an excuse to guzzle 38 cans of whatever is absolute nonsense. You simply don't need to do that. So the first thing I would do is to really question and challenge whether actually you do need to supplement at all, full stop. you would want to take specific advice if you're a serious sports person. And you'll quite commonly hear and talk to runners who are doing a 10K or slightly longer, and they'll talk about having gels and having kind of sugar and all these kind of things. And for the most part, it's not really needed. And there'll be alternative ways of fueling and hydrating without that high sugar load. However, there clearly is a need to balance those kinds of things out. But the first thing I would do is to question whether you really need to supplement, particularly with very, very sugary drinks. Can you get your energy from other sources? And the answer is normally yes, you can. Not least of all because if you eat too many of those gels when you're running, they do terrible things to your inside. So it's really not to be. It's not a mistake you make more than once.
No, it's not.
But the secret generally is just proper nutrition, and it tends to be more the salts that people are deficient in that tends to slow them down. So that provided that you're well fed, in the run up to a race or a proper significant sporting activity, tends to be more hydration and salts that people become depleted in that tends to become a problem in terms of their performance. So the idea of the year 8 football team on a Wednesday evening dishing out the energy drinks at halftime, it's nonsense. Let them have a banana or half an orange or something like that and they'll be fine. So that's a very long-winded way of me climbing onto my soapbox to say that nobody needs to drink sports drinks. Full stop. They just don't need to exist. Secondly, challenge what you think you need in terms of supplementation, particularly when it comes to sugar-orientated fueling during exercise. The other aspect there, which makes it particularly risky, is that during exercise, you do tend to become dehydrated, which means that you do tend to have less salivary flow, which means that all those sticky, sugary things, they're just sitting there. So it's really a potent mix. And if you're a bit tired when you get home, you may not brush your teeth very well, all those kinds of things. And it can become a little bit of a perfect storm. So I would exercise common sense, caution, and cynicism. Because I tell you what, Roger Bannister did not have sports drinks. These things are marketed on the basis of health. And listen, there's a place for everything and everything in its right place, but it's about moderation. And it's just about making sensible choices. But it is heartbreaking when you see somebody turn up and they have got a mouthful of decay as a consequence of drinking these things. And it happens on a regular basis, particularly with the teenage orthodontic clientele who, they will go into the local newsagent or supermarket with a couple of quid. And instead of buying a bag of crisps and a can of soda, they'll buy one of these things. Because quite often they're loaded up with caffeine and these kinds of things as well, and yeah, it's a disaster. I know there's some steps to control some of this thing, but it can't come soon enough. In my view. There we go. That's my soapbox.
well needed, I think.
I think but the main issues when I think about sports and dental treatment are: number one, in reverse order, beware the sports drinks. Number two, take professional advice around nutrition, but nothing is better than a good balanced diet and good nutrition, good hydration rather. If you are engaging in contact sports, all players should be wearing a mouth guard, preferably a custom made one. If you have orthodontic appliances in place and they are fixed, then you will need to take specific steps, care and advice to ensure that you have a mouth guard that is fit for purpose. And if there's any doubt, get it checked, get it adjusted. And finally, if you are considering starting orthodontic treatments and you're a serious contact sports player, or even just somebody that would quite like an alternative, then clear aligner treatments represent, a really different, useful option that very well may give you the best of both worlds. And I suppose the final point is where we started, is that more and more people are looking after their health and looking after their well-being and looking for self-improvement. And whether that's through general dental work and investing in restorative or cosmetic dentistry, or indeed orthodontic treatments, the crossover of those people and those that are playing regular sport is growing and growing and growing. So this is a conversation which I think will stay at the forefront of ours and our patients' minds as we move forward through the next few years and beyond, I hope, because it's a jolly good thing in my view.
Absolutely, and I think that's a great summary of everything that we've mentioned. Are you on social media? If someone wanted to follow you, where could they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn under my name, which is Guy Deeming. They can follow me on Instagram, which again is my name. And probably the best thing to do is to follow the practice, because there's lots and lots of information on there at Queensway Braces. And there's lots and lots of patients on there who are telling their stories, including quite a few sports people. And you'll be able to follow their progress and their success. So we've certainly had one, Savannah Marshall, who's worked with us actually, so I can say her name, who is a very, very successful female boxer. And she's done very, very well recently in some of her fights, and is going on to great, great things with a really nice smile.
Fantastic. I'm going to have a look at that.
She didn't get her teeth knocked out. She didn't get her teeth knocked out when we were recruiting. A long way it continues. So there we are. So have a little look at Queensway Braces, or LinkedIn is the best place.
All right, fantastic. Well, that's amazing. Thank you, Guy, for sitting and talking to me. I've learned tons from speaking to you, so I'm sure other people will as well. Yeah, thanks a lot.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Dr. Guy Deeming there. I will leave all of his social media information below if you want to go and check him out. If you want to learn more about Smile Month, you can go to smilemonth.org, follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and again, we'll link all of our social information below as well. Now, if you want some more bespoke oral health advice, you can always contact our helpline and go to dentalhealth.org/dental helpline to send them any queries that you might have about your oral health. Now, thank you again to Dr. Guy Deeming and Align Technology for making this podcast possible, and thank you to you for listening.